The Dallas Cowboys and the Cleveland Browns already have played one of the weirdest games of the NFL season so far. In fact, I think if I showed you the box score from this game, you would have a hard time thinking that this was a game that at one point Dallas was winning 27-3. The box score doesn't show Cavante Turpin's 60-yard punt return touchdown that he had halfway through the third quarter, but what it does show is that Cleveland had a time of possession advantage. They converted 3 of 5 fourth down attempts. They held Dallas to a 4 for 14 showing on third down, and Dallas had 11 penalties for 85 yards. Dallas as a whole outgained Cleveland by 35 yards, even though Cleveland had twice as many sacks and twice as many yards lost due to those sacks. And yet somehow Dallas, like I said, was winning this game 27-3 at one point after Cavante Turpin had that kick return, or I should say punt return touchdown halfway through the third quarter. I will highlight the defense for Dallas in Sunday's game because defensively they did everything that they were supposed to do. They were supposed to get after Deshaun Watson, and they were supposed to force him into poor decisions. And while that probably is a lot easier when you're playing Deshaun Watson to force him into poor decisions than it is other quarterbacks around the NFL, they still were able to do it. 2 sacks between Eric Kendricks and DeMarcus Lawrence each. You have a sack for DeMarvion Overshown, who was playing his debut game, even though it's his second year as a professional. He also chipped in 11 combined tackles and a tackle for loss. Defensively, they had some young players step up, and they had their veterans step up as well. What I don't really like for Dallas is they really showed that running the ball, they don't have much of an option. I think Ezekiel Elliott having 40 yards seemed almost like a lot when you watch the game because every single game was just a 3 or 4 yard gain. But, I mean, that does contribute when you run the ball 10 to 15 times. If you're getting 4 or 5 yards a pop, you're going to have a somewhat decent game. But you have Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle, who really struggled to do a lot. 18 carries for 66 yards between the two of them. And I mean, Ezekiel Elliott's value is mostly going to be as an extra blocker in the backfield, basically, especially on passing plays where they need to have guys like CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Cavante Turpin, get open and make plays down the field. However, even though Dallas didn't look incredible against Cleveland, you're not really supposed to. Cleveland has a pretty good defense. They have Myles Garrett. They obviously have Denzel Ward. They obviously have all the guys that they have on defense. I just kind of wish that we felt more like this team was at one point winning 27-3. If you're winning a game 27-3 halfway through the third quarter, there should be some sort of dominance that you feel from that team that's winning. And I just feel like I didn't really feel that watching them. Again, you rely on Brandon Aubrey, who kicked 4 field goals. You rely on Cavante Turpin getting a 60-yard punt return touchdown. And you rely on the fact that Deshaun Watson is just not a very good quarterback that you're going against. And that's a pretty easy formula for success. But this is not going to be the hardest game on Dallas' schedule. And while they probably know that, it leaves me to believe that there's going to be somewhere along this season for Dallas where there's going to be a fork in the road, whether they need to decide if they can run the ball with Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle or they need to figure something else out. Because if they are faced with a situation where Zeke has done nothing, Dowdle's done nothing, and the pass rush is getting after Dak Prescott and he's not making great decisions, there's going to be a change that needs to be made. Shifting the focus to Cleveland for a bit, there were obvious stretches throughout this game where it was pretty obvious Nick Chubb wasn't around. It was pretty obvious that the receivers are getting pretty frustrated with Deshaun Watson. Amari Cooper, most notably. Look, man, You can't have a game where Amari Cooper gets 2 receptions. And I know the box score is going to show 9 targets. If you watched Deshaun Watson throw the ball Sunday, you know at least 10 to 15 passes of Deshaun Watson's were so inaccurate. They were flying out of the back of the end zone. They were flying 10 yards out of bounds. They were flying into the stands. Like, Deshaun Watson was terrible. And there was a lot of things that Deshaun Watson showcased on Sunday that have made not only Cleveland Browns fans upset the last few years while he's been there, but going back to when he was a Texan. I mean, I would be the first person to tell you that I think Deshaun Watson kind of got a little bit overhyped in Houston, and he started to showcase some qualities and some attributes in his game that you really don't appreciate if you're a fan of a team that he's playing quarterback for. There's obviously all the off-the-field issues with Deshaun Watson, and I'm just going to be honest, as much as I hate Deshaun Watson, I'm not really going to bring that up because I don't think that's part of this conversation. But I will say that this is, by each and every passing day, this is looking like one of the worst trades in NFL history, sending Deshaun Watson from Houston to Cleveland for all the draft picks that Cleveland gave up, plus the fact that Cleveland paid Deshaun Watson all this money, $260 million guaranteed. And they've gotten a combined 14 games out of Deshaun Watson. And while they do have a pretty good record in those games, they're pretty left high and dry when he's on the field with the decisions he makes. And, even if he isn't healthy, I don't think it's a much of a step down from having Deshaun Watson on the field. And we saw Cleveland win with Joe Flacco last year. So it's not head scratching anymore. It's more you kind of just have your answer on Deshaun Watson after this game, I feel like. And the answer is he's just not the guy.